Annie Osburn has been a lawyer, housekeeper, nanny, guide, and fiction writer. She's lived in Detroit, where she was born. She's lived in California, DC, Alaska, Utah, Montana. When asked what she loves most about these places where she's lived, she says she loves what the sunrise looks like on the water and on the mountains. Annie's greatest fear and her greatest area of confidence both pertain to her identity as a storyteller. She says she's most confident that she can handle open mic nights between drinks number 3 and 4. So any night, just give her 3 drinks, rack up the 4th, and she's there. But what is she most afraid of? That one day she won't be able to connect with people through her writing. When you listen to her presentation, Homegrown Monsters, I think you'll agree that Annie has nothing to fear. Please welcome Annie Osburn.
All right, hello. So a brief introduction. I promise I'm not trying to be political, and the people who know me won't believe that at all. But there are a few parts of the story that are admittedly a little vague. And I know it's against the ethos of storytelling, but since we've reopened the debate as to whether and how much health insurance companies have to cover people with pre-existing conditions, and this is recorded and being put on the internet, I'm gonna be a little vague, and that's just how that is. All right, so whenever. My dad's parents had this poster of an abominable snowman up in their garage for 30 years. No one remembers what happened to the poster after they moved to the nursing home, but everyone remembered his arm reaching out at you, one foot poised to stomp the snow, to shake the earth with fear. The first time my grandmother fell, that I remember, was face first into a snowbank. We'd driven across the Midwest in a blizzard to get to Chicago, the Field Museum. I was vomiting because I was 6 years old on a road trip, and that's what 6-year-olds do. And she got out of the car and immediately fell into a waist-high snowdrift. She fell a lot after that, onto far less forgiving surfaces. Her reflexes were terrible. She never managed to get her hands out in time. During the Bush era, she had black eyes and bruises and cracked ribs to rival a boxer without much talent for the sport. I asked about it sometimes, but every family has the things we don't talk about. For some, it's how great Aunt Tina would rather show you pictures of her cats than of her children. For others, it's why Uncle John and his friend Bruce have been roommates for 40 years. For us, it's Huntington's disease. Huntington's is a genetic disease that slowly eats away at your command over your muscles and your mind. Readers will know Huntington's from Ian McEwan's Saturday, where it's used as an extended allegory for the Iraq War. TV watchers may remember it from House, an extended plotline, and a very special episode of Baywatch. I don't judge. But most people, if they can place it, will remember Woody Guthrie. Woody saw Huntington's kill his mother, destroy his family, and still he traveled the country by train, legally and otherwise, and wrote songs that united people. When he died from Huntington's at 55, he left behind thousands of songs and 7 children, each of whom had a 50-50 chance of inheriting the disease. So when I found out the same monster was stalking my family, I wanted to take a page from Woody, not the 7 children part. But I wanted to ride the rails and write stories that would make people feel loved, and if not loved, at least a little less lonesome. Only problem was I was at law school when I found out, at an elite institution that cost an elite amount of money. So I panicked and I stayed put. Turns out law school is actually a really great place to find out you might have a fatal disease, because law school doesn't care. This is actually what it looked like after I paid tuition. But the bar exam doesn't care. The rest of the exam schedule certainly doesn't care. So I graduated and got a job at a nice big law firm, doing nice big law firm things like helping companies avoid fines for trying to rig the markets, and helping bankers avoid jail time for accidentally destroying the markets. Woody would have been so proud. If I worked 80-hour weeks in 6-minute billable increments, paid off my debt, and almost forgot about the monster. Now, I might not have been the best lawyer or ever specifically handled any insurance cases, but I would never advise a client to get up on stage in front of 100 people and admit to having a pre-existing condition on the basis of an anonymous genetic test. I would tell her that the audience could make sufficient inferences on the basis of her anomalous life choices that followed. This is McCarthy, Alaska. This is actually the view of McCarthy from a bush plane that seats 4, including the pilot. And when I took this, I was vomiting, because that's what 20-somethings with weak stomachs do on bush flights. The whole town is about 250 people in the middle of nowhere. There isn't electricity or running water, but there's mountains and glaciers and snow. My first time there, I stayed in Kennecott, which is the fancy mining town just up the road, where the hotel has indoor plumbing. And I stayed in that nice hotel because I was still technically a lawyer, still technically making a ridiculous amount of money. But I kept hearing stories about McCarthy, home of dirt bags and outhouses and the only bar for 60 miles in any direction. I heard it was a place where people might howl along to Woody Guthrie songs at river bar bonfires and then fall asleep under the northern lights. So, let's be fair, I quit the lawyering gig. I moved to McCarthy for the next 4 summers, taking odd jobs, writing my stories on the side. Alaska, with its rivers and forget-me-nots and mountainous piles of moose droppings, became home. And that might have been enough, but my grandparents still died. My parents were still making plans for the inevitable, so I had to do something more. I had to climb a mountain, Mount Bona specifically, 16,421 feet. Now, Huntington's screws with your impulse control, but I think we can blame this one entirely on me. My friends that I guided with were going to do it, so I was going to do it with them. This is me having fallen into a snowdrift a little deeper than my waist. Only I didn't fall from being sick. I fell in from being foolish enough to hit a crevasse field on snowshoes instead of skis. Hanging there, I could see what I hoped was the bottom of the crevasse about 40 feet below me. Blue ice so dark it was like staring at the night sky. I didn't make the summit. Altitude sickness. It's kind of a thing with me. But I didn't keep anyone else from making it either. I hauled gear to high camp at 14,500 feet. I built snow walls for the tent and a snow commode, which is much more elegant than it sounds if you can balance while crouching over the trough. On the last day, we descended more than 4,000 feet to base camp, only to see a blizzard coming in the distance. If we wanted our pilot to have any chance of picking us up that week, we'd have to strike camp, load it into our sleds, and haul it all another few miles up another few thousand feet. The wind kept blowing my sled off course, but I leaned into it, stomping down the glacier and up and around its bend as the blizzard bore down on us. Every part of me froze, but I kept going. I didn't know how long I'd be able to, so I kept going. And the metaphor is a bit convoluted at this point. I'm not sure if I'm running for the monster or if I froze myself into the monster. Genetics is a funny thing. But whatever happens next, I got on that plane. I kept writing, and I keep trying to be like my father, like my grandmother, like Woody, indomitable. Thanks all.